A single distress signal to humanity, and the galaxy was forever changed. In the wide, silent reaches of space, the core word Concordance ruled over hundreds of worlds and many kinds of people. The Concordance had stood for thousands of years because its members chose careful steps and quiet words over loud fights. Most species inside it were gentle thinkers, builders of shining cities and growers of soft glowing gardens. They traded knowledge and art and rare elements. They avoided war whenever they could, because war broke things that took ages to make. Far from the bright core, another power grew in the dark. The Swarm Dominion was not like the others. It had no single leader to talk with. It was one huge mind, spread across billions of insect bodies, linked by sharp thoughts and hunger. The swarm did not trade. It took. Worlds fell under its claws in days. Cities became nests. Egg sacs hung from broken towers. The swarm moved fast and never stopped until nothing lived anymore. Virene Collective lived on the edge of swarm space. Their home was Liravel, a beautiful planet of tall crystal spires that caught starlight and turned it into soft music. The Virene were tall and thin, with skin like clear glass and eyes that glowed faint blue. They sang to their machines and grew food in floating gardens. They had strong science but weak weapons because they never needed them before. One night, the swarm came without warning. Their ships looked like living things with shells of bone and eyes that burned red. They dropped from jump points close to the star and started to burn Liravel from above. Crystal towers cracked and fell like glass rain. The Virene fought with what they had. Small ships darted between the big swarm vessels, firing thin beams that barely scratched the shells. Ground forces tried to hold cities, but the swarm poured in like black water. Days passed, and the Virene lost more ground. The High Matriarch, whose name was Cyrillune, stood in the last safe chamber. Under the biggest spire, she looked at screens that showed fire and smoke across her world. Her people died by the thousands. Many hid in deep shelters, but food and air would run out soon. She knew no help would come fast enough. The Concordance Council had already sent messages of deep sadness, but no ships. The old rule was clear. Do not fight the swarm. It always wins. Cyrillune made her choice. She walked to the deep broadcast core and opened every channel, every old frequency band, every forgotten band that once carried voices of races long gone. She spoke in the clear trade tongue that most beings understood. We are the Virene of Liravel. The swarm has come to end us. Our cities burn. Our children hide in darkness. We have no more strength left. Any who hear this, please come. We ask for nothing but life. We beg for help. Please. She sent the message again and again until the power started to fail. The signal raced outward in every direction, like ripples on dark water, nebulae, and empty voids. It brushed past sleeping stations and silent probes. Most listeners turned away. The swarm was too big. The cost was too high. Some felt pity, but pity does not launch ships. Months went by. The signal grew weak as it traveled far. It crossed borders few ever crossed. It reached the quiet edge of the Orion Arm, where stars spread thin and worlds sat far apart from each other. There, in a system called Sol, a blue-green planet spun slowly. Earth. Humans lived on Earth. They had climbed out of their deep gravity well centuries ago. They built ships and stations and spread to nearby stars. They met other races long ago, but stayed mostly to themselves. The galaxy called them Deathworlders because their home was hard. Air full of poison, storms that tore metal, oceans that swallowed ships, gravity that crushed bones. They were strong and stubborn, and quick to fight when pushed. Many aliens hired human soldiers because humans did not break easy. But the big powers saw humans as young, rough, and too wild to trust with real power. On that day, a listening post on the dark side of Luna caught the faint signal. It was old and broken, but the translation software still worked. Words appeared on screens. "We are dying. Any who can hear, help us, please." The message went up the chain fast. Radars pinged, offices buzzed, command centers woke up. People in many countries read the same words at the same time. For once, no one argued about who should speak first. No votes, no long talks, no waiting for allies. Within hours, leaders from every major nation sat in secure rooms. They looked at maps of Liravel and swarm fleets. They saw the numbers. Huge gap in power. No chance for small help. But humans do not think small when someone calls for help. Orders flew out. Shipyards that had slept for years lit up again. Lights burned in empty hangars. Metal groaned as huge doors opened. Sleeper fleets rose from hidden docks. Cold engines warmed. Old weapons tested their aim. Railguns, longer than city blocks, hummed with power. Carriers opened bays full of small, fast fighters. Endurance-class siege ships turned their dark hulls toward jump points. Across Earth, people watched feeds. Many had never seen full war fleets move before. Parents held children close. Soldiers kissed families goodbye. Volunteers lined up at recruitment halls. Old pilots dusted off helmets. Young engineers ran final checks. Everyone knew this was different. This was not about land or money. This was about answering a cry from strangers who had no one else. In one command center, an admiral named Mara Chen stood before a wall of screens. She had gray hair and calm eyes. She spoke to the gathered captains. They asked for help. "We do not send gifts. We do not send promises. We send everything we have. No half measures. No retreat until it ends. Tell your crews we go to save lives. We go to stop monsters. We go because we can." Cheers rose in every ship channel across the system. Humans laughed and shouted. They sang old songs about standing together. They loaded extra food, extra air, extra rounds. They knew the swarm would not expect this. They knew the galaxy would watch and wonder. The first fleet formed up. Call sign Iron Rain. 70 ships strong. Not fancy, not shiny, but heavy with guns and thick armor. Jump drives spun up. Space folded. Engines roared. They vanished into the dark, heading for Liravel. The galaxy did not know yet, but one small signal had woken something big, something that did not wait for permission, something that answered with fire and steel. Humanity moved, and nothing would stay the same. A single distress signal to humanity, and the galaxy was forever changed. The signal had reached Earth, and the answer came fast. No long debates, no waiting for votes, no careful plans drawn over weeks. Humans moved like a storm that had waited too long to break. In the first hours after the message arrived, screens across the planet filled with the same words, translated into every language. "We are dying. Any who can hear, help us, please." Leaders from old rivals sat together in secure bunkers. Military heads who had spent years watching each other now shared maps and fleet lists. Factory workers in distant cities got urgent calls to report in. Engineers who had retired years ago found their doors knocked on by young officers asking them to come back. Shipyards that had grown quiet woke up. Lights snapped on in huge dark halls. Metal clanged as cranes lifted heavy plates. Engines tested their roar for the first time in decades. Sleeper ships long kept in cold storage felt warmth. Returned to their cores. Crews rotated in fresh teams, checked weapons, loaded supplies, and ran drills until every move felt smooth. The galaxy watched from far away. Concordant spy probes caught the sudden burst of activity. Alien analysts sent reports that sounded calm but hid surprise. They saw human chatter spike high. Old battle codes came back online. Ships that had not moved in years now tested jump drives. The analysts wrote that humans might send a small force, perhaps a few cruisers, to show support. Nothing more. The swarm was too strong. No one risked everything for strangers. They were wrong. 72 hours after the signal first hit Sol system, the first ships left dock. The 7th Terran Expeditionary Fleet, callsign Iron Rain, formed up in high orbit around Earth. 70 ships, heavy with armor and guns. Their hulls were thick, scarred from old fights, but strong. Jump points opened like tears in space, and the fleet slipped through, one after another. More fleets gathered. The 12th, the 19th, the 44th. Names that once belonged to defense forces now turned outward. Sleeper armadas rose from hidden Lagrange ports. Moon shipyards emptied their bays. Asteroid mines sent fresh ore to hungry forges. Volunteers poured in from every continent. Young pilots who had only flown sims before now sat in real cockpits. Old veterans smiled as they strapped in again. Families stood on launch platforms, waving flags and holding signs that read, "Bring them home safe." No one asked for payment. No one talked about territory. No speeches about glory. Only quiet words passed between crews. We go because they called. We go because we can. Admiral Mara Chen led Iron Rain from her flagship, the heavy cruiser Thunderchild. She stood on the bridge watching stars shift as the fleet jumped again and again. Her gray hair was pulled back tight. Her eyes never left the tactical map. The swarm had no idea what came for them yet, but soon they would. Galaxy kept watching. Concordance listening posts picked up human transmissions. Phrases repeated over open channels. No one dies alone. We answer. We stay until it ends. Alien linguists puzzled over the words. They thought it was brave talk. Empty noise from a young race that did not understand real war. Then the first human ships arrived near Liravel. They did not come out of normal jump points, far from the star, like careful fleets did. They ripped into real space, close, too close. Engines burned hot as they shed speed in hard braking maneuvers. Ships that should have torn apart from stress, held together because humans built them tough. The swarm noticed the new arrivals, and turned. Some bioships peeled away from the burning planet to meet what they thought was another weak relief group. Iron Rain opened fire without warning. Railguns spat long streaks of metal at speeds no swarm ship could dodge. Shells punched through living hulls like knives through soft flesh, bloomed silent, in vacuum, as hive sections burst open. Kinetic impactors, the size of houses, slammed into swarm clusters, turning them into spreading clouds of debris. Fighters poured from carrier bays like angry bees, swarming over bigger targets. Swarm commanders felt confusion ripple through their shared mind. These new enemies did not talk. They did not demand surrender. They did not try to board for prisoners. They killed fast and kept coming. On Liravel, the Virine watched from deep shelters. Their screens showed the battle above. Crystal fragments still fell like slow rain, but now fire came from human ships instead of swarm ones. Cyrillon stood in her command chamber, eyes wide. She had sent the signal with no real hope. Now strangers fought for her people, fought hard, fought without pause. Human voices filled open channels. Laughter mixed with shouts. Orders flew fast. Jokes passed between ships, even as they took hits. One pilot called out over comms, "That big one is mine," before his fighter dove straight into a hive mouth and detonated inside. Another crew sang an old Earth song as their turret tracked targets. The swarm had never heard anything like it, a species that found joy in the middle of death. The first wave of swarm ships broke. They tried to reform, but human guns never stopped. More fleets arrived behind. Iron Rain jump points flashed open again and again. New squadrons poured in. Heavy siege ships took positions above the planet. Their main batteries turned toward swarm reinforcements still coming from deep space. Concordance observers who had stayed hidden now sent frantic messages back to their council. This is not help. This is invasion scale. The humans bring everything. They do not negotiate. They destroy. Alien leaders who once ignored the Virene call now gathered in emergency sessions. They watched feeds of human ships tearing swarm formations apart. They saw no flags of conquest, only relentless advance. Species that had laughed at humans as barbarians now felt cold fear. What if the humans turned their eyes elsewhere next? On Earth, the rest of humanity waited. Families gathered around screens. News feeds showed live images when they could get them. People cheered in streets. Strangers hugged in bars. Volunteers kept arriving at enlistment centers. Factories worked around the clock. Ships kept leaving. Mara Chen looked at her bridge crew. They were tired, but their eyes burned bright. She spoke low, so only they heard. We started this, now we finish it. No one gets left behind. The swarm pulled back from Liravel for the first time in their long history. They left burning wrecks behind and jumped away to regroup. But the humans did not stop to celebrate. They chased, they hunted, they moved deeper into what had been swarm space. The galaxy began to change in small ways. Trade routes shifted. Alliances whispered new terms. Old fears woke up, but the biggest change was still coming. One signal had started it all. One answer. From a death world had turned quiet space into fire. Humanity had woken up, and the stars felt small. A single distress signal to humanity, and the galaxy was forever changed. Liravel burned under a sky full of smoke and fire. The crystal spires that once sang with light now stood broken and dark. The ground shook from falling debris. The air carried the sharp smell of burning metal and living flesh. The Virene, who still breathed, hid in deep tunnels, their glowing eyes dim with fear and exhaustion. Cyrilun watched the battle above from her last command post. The screens showed swarm ships pulling back for the first time, their huge bodies leaking fluid as they fled. Then the human ships arrived again. Not one fleet, but many. Iron Rain led the way, but more jump points opened like wounds in space. New squadrons poured through heavy cruisers, destroyers, carriers, siege ships. Their hulls painted black and gray. No bright colors, no fancy designs, only purpose. The humans came close, too close. Engines screaming as they braked hard near the planet. Gravity pulled at their frames, held strong. The swarm turned to meet them, thinking these new enemies would break like all others had. Bioships the size of small cities rushed forward, mouths open to spit acid spines and living missiles. Human railguns answered first. Long streaks of metal flew at high speed, punching holes through thick shells. Explosions bloomed inside the living hulls, tearing them apart from within. Fighters launched in waves, small, fast, and angry. They darted between the big swarm vessels, firing missiles that burrowed deep before detonating. On the bridge of Thunderchild, Admiral Mara Chen watched the tactical display, her face calm, but her hands tight on the rail. She spoke quiet orders. Keep pressure on their flanks. Do not let them regroup. Target the hive mothers first. The swarm mind links through those big ones. Cut them and the rest fall apart. Her voice carried over every ship channel. Crews nodded and moved faster. Human boarding teams launched next. Small craft slammed against swarm hulls, cutting holes with plasma torches. Armored soldiers poured in. They wore thick suits that could take acid and claws. They carried heavy rifles and short blades. They moved like hunters who knew their prey. Screams came over open channels. Not swarm screams, but human ones, full of wild energy. "Come get some," one voice shouted. Another laughed loud. "We got you now, bug." Inside the hive ships, the fight turned close and bloody. Humans fought in narrow tunnels, lit only by muzzle flashes and burning flesh. Swarm warriors rushed them in waves, claws snapping, jaws wide. Soldiers met them with shotguns and grenades. Walls shook from blasts. Blood slicked the floors. Both kinds, but humans kept pushing forward. They reached the neural cores, the pulsing brains that linked the whole ship. Charges set. Timers started. Humans pulled back, laughing as they ran. Explosions ripped through the cores. The hive ships went dark and drifted dead. Cyrillune saw it all. Her people gathered around the screens, silent at first. Then whispers grew. They had never seen anyone fight like this. The humans did not run from danger. They ran toward it. They died laughing. They killed without hate, only purpose. The Virene felt something new stir inside them, hope mixed with awe. These strangers had come from far away, answered a call no one else would, and now they turned the tide. The swarm tried to counter. They sent fresh waves, bigger ships, more warriors, but humans adapted fast. Electronic warfare vessels jammed the hive mind links. False signals flooded the swarm. Thoughts, confusion spread among the insects. They attacked each other by mistake. Human spoofers played loud music, old battle songs, and strange human words over the links. The swarm mind faltered for the first time. On the ground, human drop pods fell like rain. They carried troops, medics, engineers, soldiers. Landed hard, then moved out fast. They cleared swarm nests from ruined cities. They carried wounded Virene to safety. They set up field hospitals with bright lights and fast medicine. Virene healers watched humans work with wonder. These Deathworlders knew pain and injury well. They treated wounds without fear. They talked gentle to scared children. They shared food and water. One human medic, named Thomas, knelt by a young Virene whose leg had been crushed. He spoke soft words. The child did not understand the tongue, but felt the calm. Thomas worked quick, cleaned the wound, set the bone, wrapped it tight. The child stopped crying. Thomas smiled, patted the small hand. "You are safe now, kid. We got you." Above the planet, the battle grew fiercer. Swarm reinforcements arrived from nearby systems, but human fleets kept coming. More jump points, more ships. The humans did not tire. They rotated crews, brought fresh fighters, repaired damage on the move. They pushed the swarm back, step by step, system by system. Worlds the swarm had taken long ago now saw human ships arrive, not to conquer, but to free. Concordant spies watched from hidden stations. They sent reports that shook their leaders. This is not normal. The humans fight without end. They take no prisoners. They offer no terms. They destroy and move on. The council met in panic. Old alliances felt weak. Species who had stayed neutral now sent quiet messages to Earth. "We support your actions. Please continue." On Liravel, the fires started to die down. Human engineers landed with heavy machines. They cleared rubble, rebuilt power lines, brought clean water. Virene came out of hiding, slowly at first, then in groups. They watched humans work side by side. No masters, no servants, only help. Cyrillune walked among them. She met Mara Chen on the surface. The admiral stood tall in her armor, face streaked with soot. "Thank you," Cyrillune said, her voice soft. "The humans came when no one else would." Mara Chen looked at her straight. "We heard your call. We answered. That is all. We stay until your world breathes free again, until the swarm can never come back." Word spread across the galaxy fast. The swarm had been stopped, pushed back, broken in places no one thought possible. Species who once feared the insects now whispered about humans. The Deathworlders, the ones who laugh in battle, the ones who come when called. The old order shook. Trade stopped in some places. New talks started. Others sent ships loaded with supplies toward Liravel, not to fight, but to show they stood with the humans. In the swarm core worlds, panic grew. The hive mind felt pain it had never known before. Links broke. Queens died. Young warriors turned and ran. The swarm had always won by fear and numbers. Now they faced something worse. Relentless will that did not bend. Human voices filled the channels again. "We are not done yet. Keep pushing. No one dies alone." The words carried far. They reached Earth where people watched and cheered. They reached other worlds where aliens listened and wondered. The battle for Liravel was won, but the war was just starting. Humans chased the swarm deeper into dark space. They hunted. They struck. They never stopped. One signal had brought them here. One cry had changed everything. The galaxy watched and waited for what came next. A single distress signal to humanity, and the galaxy was forever changed. The swarm pulled back from Liravel, leaving behind broken ships and empty space. Their retreat looked like panic. For the first time, the hive mind felt something new: fear. Humans did not stop to rest. They chased the swarm, chased them hard. Iron Rain led the way. Other fleets followed close. More ships arrived every day from Sol. The humans poured into swarm territory like water through cracked stone. Mara Chen stood on the bridge of Thunderchild, her eyes fixed on the star map. The swarm core worlds glowed red ahead. Huge planets covered in living hives. Queens deep inside guarded by endless warriors. She spoke to her fleet commanders. "We hit their heart. We cut the links. We end this. No mercy, no pause. Push forward." Human ships jumped again and again. They appeared in systems the swarm thought safe. Railguns fired first. Long shells struck from far away. Hive worlds shook as impacts tore open outer layers. Fighters swarmed in. Carriers launched waves that darkened the sky. Human boarding teams landed on the biggest hives. They fought through tunnels thick with warriors. Claws met armor. Blades flashed. Blood-covered walls. Humans sang as they advanced. Old songs mixed with battle cries. The swarm tried to overwhelm them with numbers, but humans used fire and grenades and heavy guns. The hives fell one by one. Electronic warfare ships stayed close. They jammed the hive mind links. They sent false orders. They played loud noise that broke the shared thoughts. Swarm warriors turned on each other. Confusion spread fast. Queens screamed in pain as connections snapped. The humans kept coming. They took no breaks. They repaired ships in flight. They fed crews quick meals. They slept in shifts, but never stopped. On one world, called Kresh, the swarm had built their biggest shipyard. Living docks stretched across orbit. Humans arrived without warning. Siege ships opened fire. Kinetic impactors fell like rain. One, the size of a mountain. They struck at near light speed. The shipyard shattered. Pieces drifted away. Burning swarm queens tried to flee in escape pods. But human fighters hunted them down. No queen lived to reach another system. Concordance leaders watched from safe distance, their council chambers filled with quiet panic. Old rules no longer worked. Species who had stayed out of the war now sent messages to Earth. "We stand with you. We offer support. Please accept our aid." They sent ships full of food, medicine, spare parts, not to fight, but to help the humans who fought for others. Humans accepted the gifts with short thanks, but kept their focus on the swarm. The Varine rebuilt on Liravel. Human engineers worked beside them. They taught how to make strong walls, how to build fast ships, how to defend a world. Cyrillune walked among the new structures. She saw her people stand taller, their eyes brighter. They no longer hid. They learned from the Deathworlders. They learned to fight back. Needed. Deeper in swarm space, the humans found horrors. Worlds stripped bare, turned into nests, billions of bodies used as food or workers. The humans saw children of many races still alive, chained and broken. Medics moved in fast. They freed the captives. They treated wounds. They carried the weak to ships bound for safety. Human soldiers burned the nests. They left nothing for the swarm to use again. One captain named Reyes led a strike on a queen world. His ship, the Hammerfall, took heavy hits, but kept going. Boarding teams reached the core. They found the queen, huge and ancient. Her mind tried to crush theirs with fear and pain. The humans pushed through. They set charges. They ran as the core exploded. The queen died. Her scream echoed through what remained of the hive mind. The swarm felt it everywhere. Warriors froze, queens faltered, the end came closer. Human losses grew, ships burned, crews died, but no one turned back. Replacements arrived, fresh volunteers from Earth, young faces, full of fire. They learned fast, they fought hard. The dead were honored with quiet words, their names added to ship rolls. Families back home received messages. We are proud, we miss you, but the fight must finish. The swarm tried one last stand. They gathered every remaining ship in the core system. They formed a wall of living hulls. Humans came in force, fleets from every direction. Jump points flashed open, siege ships took positions. Railguns spoke together. The swarm wall cracked, then broke. Human fighters poured through gaps. Boarding teams stormed the last queens. The fight turned brutal, close and loud. Humans died in hundreds, but they took thousands with them. At the center, the final queen waited. She was old and wise. She tried to speak through broken links, offer terms, surrender, peace. The humans did not answer. They fired, they boarded, they ended her. The psychic death scream rolled out across stars. The hive mind shattered. Pieces of it died in silence. The swarm dominion fell apart, scattered. No orders, no purpose. They became animals, fleeing into dark. Human commanders broadcast to the galaxy. The swarm is broken. Their queens are dead. Their worlds are free. Any who still fight, lay down arms. Any who hide, come out. We will not hunt the helpless. Surrender came fast. Scattered swarm forces dropped weapons. Living ships went dark. They waited for what came next. Humans did not kill them all. They took the warriors as prisoners. They treated the wounded. They sent them to camps with food and care. The galaxy watched in shock. Humans who fought like demons now showed mercy. Concordance ships arrived soon after. They brought diplomats. They brought aid. They expected humans to demand power, territory, tribute. Mara Chen met them on neutral ground. Her voice steady. We came to answer a call. We stay to make sure it never happens again. We want nothing else. No thrones, no taxes. Help the weak rebuild, that is all. The galaxy changed fast. Old alliances broke. New ones formed. Species talked openly about humans. The Deathworlders, the ones who answered the call, the ones who finished the job. Trade flowed toward Earth. Ships docked at human stations. Gifts arrived from far worlds. Ambassadors lined up to speak with human leaders. On Liravel, the crystal spires rose again, taller, stronger. Vereen sang new songs, songs about the strangers who came from the dark edge. Songs about fire and steel and unbreakable will. Cyrillune looked at the stars. She knew the swarm was gone. She knew peace had returned, because one voice had cried out, and one people had answered. Humans began to leave. Most fleets turned for home. Some stayed to guard, to teach, to help. The war ended not with parades, but with quiet work. The galaxy breathed again, but it breathed different. One signal had started everything. One answer had changed the rules forever. Humans had shown the stars what it meant to stand for strangers. A single distress signal to humanity, and the galaxy was forever changed. The last swarm queen died in silence. Her psychic scream faded into nothing across the core worlds. The living hives went dark. Warriors stopped moving. No more orders, no more hunger. The dominion that had swallowed worlds for ages broke apart like dry leaves in wind. Human fleets hung above the shattered planets, their guns still hot, their crews tired but watchful. Mara Chen looked out from Thunderchild's bridge at the quiet battlefield. Debris drifted slow, ships that once screamed now floated dead. She turned to her officers. Send the word. The swarm is finished. Queens gone, links broken. Any survivors who want peace may come forward. We hold fire on those who kneel. Messages went out on every band. Humans waited. They did not hunt the broken ones. Medics landed on ruined worlds. They found swarm young still in pods. They carried them gentle to ships, where doctors worked to save what could be saved. From many races, walked free from chains. Humans gave them food, clothes, passage home. The galaxy saw mercy where it expected only death. Most human fleets turned for home. One by one they jumped back towards Sol. The heavy siege ships, the carriers, the railgun cruisers left the dark spaces behind. They carried wounded, they carried stories, they carried the weight of what they had done. Earth waited for them. Families stood on platforms, lights shining bright. Crowds cheered as ships came in. Soldiers stepped out, tired faces smiling. Children ran to parents. Hugs lasted long. On Liravel, the rebuilding grew fast. Crystal spires rose again taller than before. They caught starlight and turned it into soft songs. Virene worked with human tools and learned new ways to shape stone, to power machines, to guard their skies. Cyrillon walked the new streets. She saw her people laugh again. Children played under open sky. Healers mixed old Virene medicine with human knowledge. Scars faded, but memories stayed. Other worlds changed too. Species who once feared the swarm now built defenses. They studied human ships. They trained soldiers. The old Concordance Council met often. They talked about new rules. They talked about humans. The Deathworlders who came when called, who fought without end, who left when the fight ended. Ambassadors arrived at Earth from far systems. They brought gifts, rare metals, art, songs, promises of friendship. Human leaders met them with simple words. We help when asked. We ask nothing in return. Trade grew fast. Ships docked at human stations. Merchants from every corner came to see the blue world. They bought human machines. They sold strange foods. They shared stories around tables. Humans listened. They learned. The galaxy opened wider than before. Old borders softened. New routes opened. Species who had stayed hidden now spoke freely. They told of old fears, new hopes. Earth itself changed. Quiet at first, people walked taller. Grew up hearing tales of Liravel, of Iron Rain, of the day the fleet answered a call. Schools taught new history. The day one signal woke the Deathworlders. Factories built not just for war, but for peace. Ships carried settlers to empty worlds. They planted trees, built homes, raised families under new suns. Mara Chen retired to a small house by the sea. She watched waves roll in. She thought of faces lost, of battles won. She kept a small crystal from Liravel on her table. It glowed soft when light hit it. She smiled, sometimes remembering the Virene child who gave it to her. Thank you for coming, the child had said. Mara answered, we came because you called. Cyrillon visited Earth years later. She walked among humans. She saw their cities, their wild parks, their loud markets. She met old soldiers who fought for her world. She thanked them. They shrugged, said it was what we do. She looked at the sky, saw human ships come and go, peaceful now, carrying trade not war. People owed their lives to these strangers. These Deathworlders who laughed in battle, who cried for the lost, who never asked for thanks. The galaxy learned a new truth in quiet talks, in trade halls, in deep space stations. When a distress call sounds, humans listen. They do not wait. They do not bargain. They move fast. They bring everything. They stay until safe. They leave when done. No empire rose from it. No throne claimed the stars. Only a promise stayed. If you call, we answer. No one dies alone. Old powers faded. Some joined new alliances. Some faded into quiet worlds. Humans did not rule. They stood as the ones you could trust. The ones who showed up. The ones who finished the job. Species who once mocked them now spoke with respect. They called humans reliable. They called them fierce. They called them friends. On a new colony world far from Sol, children played under twin suns. Their parents told stories of the old war, of the signal of the fleets that came from nothing. The children listened wide-eyed. They asked, will we go help too? The parents smiled. Yes, if the call comes, we go together. The stars stretched wide and bright. No more shadows of the swarm. No more silence when voices cried out. One small signal had traveled far. It reached a death world. It woke a people. It changed everything forever. Humans looked out at the galaxy. They saw friends. They saw strangers. They saw worlds in need. They kept their promise, ready always, one call away. The galaxy breathed free because of it, and it would never be the same again.